to Behind the Ballot, where politics meets real life. We break down state and federal issues, showing how policy shapes everyday Americans. Engaged, balanced, and informative. That's our promise. I'm your host, Mikkel Jenkins, and we will be having our co host, Mohammed, joining us very soon. And within the last few days, there, Mohammed's actually here now. Perfect.
Hello. How's
Mohammed,
everyone
thank you
doing?
for joining us. And we're just getting started, diving into some political developments, such as what's going on with CBS, some new um, expert statements coming out of the UN Human Rights Council, a little focus on Epstein, DHS, New York, and a whole list of other developments on the legal, economic, and global sides of things as well. So definitely great to have you here, and we're gonna get right into it. So in the political spotlight this week, most importantly, is the late night host Stephen Colbert has sharply escalated his dispute with CBS after the network declined
This has been interesting.
broadcast his interview. Yeah, it was pretty astounding to see that the interview wasn't aired directly on TV for Americans to view. They had to go to alternative sources like YouTube, X, Y, and Z. Um, to view his interview with Stephen Colbert and Texas State Rep James Tallarico. He's a Democrat running for U.S. Senate against Jasmine Crockett, who's also a Democrat. The interview wasn't aired on television due to concerns over the FCC's equal time rule. So that basically means that candidates should all have equal time. Whether it's given the invitation to go onto a certain news network for an interview or appearance or things of that nature. FCC guidance from Chairman Brendan Carr, which suggested that the talk shows featuring political candidates could trigger these requirements to provide equivalent airtime to their opponents, which is including two other candidates in Tallarico's primary race, giving more airtime to Democrats who are looking to actually turn Texas into a blue state. So in the interview, it covered topics like confronting Christian nationalism, which we have seen a lot from the Trump administration, the separation of church and state, which I feel like is a very important topic and aspect of the United States in the Constitution. It's a very important precedent that we have always kept enshrined, but we have seen the continuous crumble of that. And then you also have dangers of consolidated corporate media and Republican fueled culture wars in Texas. And this was all released as a online exclusive on YouTube compared to the regular formats like on TV, the way individuals normally watch the Stephen Colbert the Colbert Report.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just another instance of domination from the administration over what these companies are able to put out. Like we've seen it before from last year, from what he was trying to do. We've seen him trying to go after the independent agencies, and even now we are seeing there was reporting that he is now actually trying to help. I believe it's Paramount and its acquirements of Warner Brother, and not wanting to help out Netflix, who is looking to rebid their cash for that deal actually. So
It's
I think on
interesting
either
seeing how
side.
much of these backdoor shady politics are going in play for things that should not matter for the government. I mean, there's one argument to be made of, well, these things are getting too big. They're forming monopolies. We want to strike down on possible monopolies in the broadcasting or in the production business, which
Yeah,
is one pretty fair argument that you could apply to many industries in America. I mean, people have been talking about breaking up big tech for quite a while now.
yeah, I would say
But
almost
that's
even every single industry has
literally
a
every I
level
mean,
of
10
monopoly that
companies
can
own
be identified.
90% of the food in America, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? So, like, it's very reasonable to say these companies and more in different industries, and basically every industry can be broken up into smaller pieces to fuel a more competitive environment, that we have seen this, near monopoly, oligopoly, essentially.
yeah,
They, really tune out of the American economy because of the, like, the socialism for the rich mentality that the government has. And what I find interesting about this is that the Trump admin has vocally been against certain broadcasts and certain individuals just because of their political opinion.
Yeah.
And then the argument for why Tallarico wasn't able to be put on, as you already mentioned, was due to FCC laws saying that they need to give equal
Yeah.
airtime to both
Yep.
candidates. Crockett's already been on Stephen Colbert's show twice.
Yeah,
In
she gets
2024 and
very
in
fair coverage compared to,
she
Tallarico.
got
I
more
feel
than
like
Tallarico. She's got
yeah, I feel
more.
like it's been almost the same, if not leveled in the level of, TV media ads, things of that nature that I've seen. I mean, on my TikTok, particularly, it has been more Tallarico, but that's because
In
I've
recent
liked a
days,
lot of those
absolutely.
things. So, I mean, that only makes sense that my algorithm is gearing me more towards Tallarico since I've liked about him. We've even talked about him on our podcast in
I like
various
him.
clips
I
that
hope
we've
he
put out.
wins.
I really hope he wins too. And Stephen Colbert like doubled down on this. He denounced CBS's decision as being crap, which I basically agree in. And he accused the network and parent company Paramount Skydance for failing to stand up to bullies in the Trump administration and directly called out Carr, the FCC chairman, for what he described as partisan motivations, urging greater resistance to perceived regulatory pressure that could chill free speech and broadcast media. So I do think on both sides of the aisle, there needs to be a conversation on the level of consolidation that's done, like we saw with the Biden administration when it came with the censoring of individuals over COVID, and really making sure that media companies were going after these individuals as well as cracking down on a national network over Facebook, X, Instagram. All of these different companies were agreeing with it, and now you're almost seeing the same thing here with CBS, who went ahead and decided not to go forward with this interview, citing certain laws. But you could see how things can start to get to a slippery slope if there's truly no stop or no independence when it comes to this level of media, and as well as this industry as well, because as Muhammad was saying, there is a monopoly on both sides of the aisle. We've seen it time and time again, and I think Americans are really just sick of it and really
Five
want to see.
companies, 5 companies, similar to the 10 companies owning 90% of the food manufacturing supply, 5 companies own 80% of local broadcasting.
Yeah,
So
and that's why
SFC
you
Local
have
Broadcasting Group,
individuals.
like, the Skydance,
Yep,
company, all of that, they own literally 80% of what people see on TV news-wise. Like, how is that
exactly.
that is not good. I mean, this goes back to the Clinton and Reagan decisions where they were kind of repealed the laws that allowed, or I should say prevented, these kinds of, mergers and acquisitions from occurring. And really, we've just seen no effort on the government's half to try to end these and break these up. And I mean, it's I hate to say it as well because we've seen it in '08 when they're like, well, even though we are aware that some of these, for example, with the recession, these banks and more have really been, scooping up the competition. They're too big to fail, and that's good for the economy to have such a stable thing. And they were not too big to fail. That's a very poor mentality to have.
Yeah,
Um, and I think it's only hopeful. I'm an optimist about this, but I just think it really is a matter of time until someone starts cracking down on these in the government. And I don't think it's. I think it's a very popular platform to be able to run on. I think that's the sole reason why. I don't think most people really care about this. For the reasons that most people run for politics is
yeah,
just. Uh, if I'll add this, if these people who are in Congress are really actually trying to make a change, there's not a lot of creative solutions going around at all.
no. Or even really any solutions going around. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think individuals like Senator Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders would. I mean, I'm sure they have come up with certain types of ideas, but in the recent months and years, there really hasn't been anything concrete or even anything that's really gotten traction in Congress. Which I don't see anything of that nature getting traction in Congress. Just given all these individuals go on these talk show hosts and things of that nature. So it seems like they're more inclined to almost have it as a monopoly, because any news is good news. So for them, it's like we're just getting coverage regardless. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether it's coming from an independent source or whether it's coming from the consolidated network that Republicans and Democrats both use in their own campaigns and avenues.
You know
And
what I
then
really like
mhm,
about that quote, "Any news is good news."
yeah,
It, like, ties into the whole similar, like, any what's the word I'm looking for? No news is bad news, any news is good news, as you said. And when I really think about that, I think of Trump in 2016. He
yeah,
paid he had the most airtime on broadcasting stations like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, by a mile
By a
compared to
mile.
any other candidate. He paid the least amount of money because they were just ranting about how horrible of a person he is or how amazing of a person he is. Or Fox did the flip before he became the Republican nominee. They were just crap talking the guy, and then he does, and they're like, "Oh well, the new era of Republican ideology and political decision making." And then you kept seeing on the other side, like, oh yeah, this guy's the worst person to ever exist. And
Yeah.
even though he went from one lower than 1% chance to win, all this media coming his way just skyrocketed the guy. And I do think that's a similar bit to what happened with Tallarico. I mean, after what the CBS, well, I mean, sorry, Stephen Colbert's parent company refused to air the interview, he had a $2.5 million day
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
donations.
Yeah.
He said it was the largest ever amount they ever got in 24 hours.
Yeah, they did him a favor doing that realistically because they not only expanded his message, because his message is so it's so clean. It takes me back to I was watching I've never actually watched it in full and I need to actually watch it in full. The Lincoln movie. If you've never watched it, Muhammad or our listeners, it's a great, great, great movie, honestly. And that's what kind of Tallarico reminds me of that time in a sense, the way that he is even though I
Conducting
know Lincoln was a Republican, he's a Democrat, but he has that religious connection that he's so bound into, but also understands that, Jesus in most ways would be a Democrat and a lot of the things that
Oh yeah.
he's
Oh yeah.
saying basically. So like I think he brings that level of religion into politics that doesn't, bend the waters of church and state, because for him that's something that's important as well. What he's talked about in his interview, and I think he's really someone that the Democrats need to put in the front lines and really needs to expand his messaging. AOC and them really need to be in his camp, even though I know it's hard because you have two very high plurific Democrats running for the same seat.
And a
However,
big
though, when
pig in
you
his
have,
side.
yeah, like when we reported last time we talked, you've had Crockett's home district newspaper endorsed Tallarico instead, stating that she was more favorable to Republicans, and even the Speaker of the House said that when Jasper Crockett had first launched her campaign.
Yeah.
So
Mike
the
Johnson,
it's
literally, yeah.
it, yeah, that was in the details. So they know and want Crockett to win this race so that either Paxton or Cryan will be able to beat Crockett come the general election, because I feel like
Yeah.
Tallarico is having his Beto O'Rourke moment, but I think he's actually going to stick the landing compared to the latter.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was also going to bring it up. But literally, Mike Johnson's comment like a month or two ago, but even recently, we've had people
Yeah, I
coming
think he
out
was like
from
this. He did one of these
yeah, literally
or
like a
something like that.
scheming little goblin. He's like, "Ooh, Crockett would be a good decision for the Democrats to make." And clearly speaking in a different terms, because what that means is it would be good for the Republicans because she's not going to win
Yeah,
if she's the opponent against Cornyn
basically.
or Paxton. And whereas Tallarico is on the other side, I mean, it's even at the point where the main thing that the largest majority that Crockett had going for was the black vote, and now it's slowly but surely going towards Tallarico, not in the way that has the majority of it, but it's nearly like 40-60, which is,
Yeah,
when that's
it's
your
yeah.
main demographic that you're going for, that's not something that you want to see when there's also a very large white and Hispanic population in the same state, which are both already a good bit towards Tallarico. And do you know what day the primary voting occurs and when it wraps up?
No, I'm not sure the actual day of the
Let me
primary, but
check.
we will be reporting on it when it does happen. And I'm just gonna continue to move on, Muhammad. When you find that date, definitely just blurt it out. And then
According to Chat GPT, the primary election day is March 3rd. Early voting
oof,
began yesterday. Early voting
oof.
began
So
yesterday.
there's gonna be some
An interesting 2 weeks.
some tea leaves dropping about percentages, mail-in ballots, all that good stuff in the coming weeks. So we
Mhm.
will definitely let our listeners be able to dive into that specifically as we continue to look into this race and all the numbers that are continuing to, or that will start to come out. And meanwhile, independent human rights, independent UN human rights expert opponent appointed by the Human Rights Council have issued a sobering statement on the massive Epstein files. Disclosures describing them as containing disturbing, incredible evidence of a possible global criminal enterprise involving systematic, large scale sexual abuse, trafficking, exploitation, sexual slavery, reproduction violence, and forced disappearance, torture, inhumane treatment, and femicide targeting women and girls. The panel emphasized the grave scale, the systematic nature, and transnational reach and backdrop of dehumanization, racism, corruption, and extreme misogyny, including that many of these acts may reasonably met the legal threshold for crimes against humanity under international law. They criticized laws and the disclosure that could undermine the full accountability and called for independent investigations to ensure no one is too wealthy or powerful to face justice for grave violations. And then you have on the home front regarding Epstein, I don't know, Mohammed, if you saw this, I think it was earlier today. Congressman Ted Lieu spoke today at a
Oh yeah,
press
I
conference and
saw
he
some of the
mentioned Trump.
comments. I didn't see the whole speech that he not speech, but all the words that he gave.
Yeah, he mentioned Trump was mentioned in the files thousands of times. As we mentioned, that one representative said his Trump's name was in the Bible more times than God's name was in the book about God. And basically, he was saying that Trump's name is in the files thousands of times with allegations of Trump raping and wanting to even threaten to kill children. And just as foreign countries are proceeding with independent investigations, the US really needs to have a truly independent investigation to unearth possibly the big, not possibly, but the biggest cover up in American history. And I think
Definitely modern
America
American
across the
history.
board, that's all we want. I mean, we continue to say this on the podcast because it is a continuously developing story because there's so much that is not unearthed and a lot that is put in the shadows. And we know
I
the
mean,
DOJ is not going to put out any more documents from what they state, but it's just terrible to see that we have a moment in our lifetimes where we can actually prosecute and investigate these people, and the man that everyone thought would be the spokesperson for them is letting them down completely.
I think the most frustrating aspect about this all, and I think honestly, I'll say this whenever I say something that might be considered a bit unlikely or out there. I am an optimist. I do think it'll get to the point where if justice isn't served and people aren't being taken in cuffs and sentenced to death penalty or life in jail at least, I think that there probably will be some American violence and going on about it, and maybe we'll see what happens. But based off of what's happened before, even if it's someone who can be considered a domestic terrorist, I mean, look at the whole Luigi situation.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Murdered
his
a healthcare
situation as
executive
well.
in
Yep.
broad daylight, and it's people get angry about these things, very frustrated. And the more this cover up goes on in such a blatant and not only blatant, but very disturbingly obvious what the plan is here to just get people to stop talking about it and to stop the spread of it. I
Yeah,
do think that something's probably going to happen.
it's gonna.
What that
Yeah,
something is, I don't know.
well,
But
it'll
I
probably
do
be the
hope
next
in the most
uh
morally lawful way that it's just simply people being properly sentenced guilty by a jury of their peers based off the evidence that is presented to them and they get the death penalty or jail. But
yeah.
it could also be that chaotic lawful side of things where it's classic American justice, like we've
I
seen with
mean,
Louis.
if anything, it's that's gonna be if there's any entity or party that's gonna be bringing anyone to justice, you would think at this moment in time, excuse me, the Democrats would be trying to put themselves together and start thinking about 2028, obviously, and or even
Yeah.
2026 when they're able to take back the House and or the Senate, about who they want to put up for DOJ. Obviously, we were talking about Jack Smith, from his testimony that he provided. I believe that was a few months ago. I think he would be a great attorney general, but they're going to need someone that is willing to prosecute all of these individuals just as the American people see fit. I mean,
Yeah.
and if they don't, Democrats have every right to catch the same flag that Republicans have. Like, yes, it'll determine if they run on it, but it's a it's a critical issue to run on for two reasons. One, it's critical as it's important to the American people, and it's also critical as it can make or destroy your base, as we're seeing with the Trump administration and a lot of individuals who were so much so vouching for all of these disclosures and basically did not get what they wanted at all.
And on top of all of that, I think a big thing is the Democratic old guard who's hesitant to go about this because even the Democrats, the old Democrats have, or the people of the old guard, have people in the who they know personally in the files or they personally are
Yeah, I
in
was
the
gonna say,
files.
what's his name? JP Blitzer, the
His
Illinois
cousin.
governor, his cousin
Yeah.
was in the files. He's the I want to say CEO of the Hyatt hotels. I
Didn't he
believe
kill
so.
himself?
No, he was in the Epstein files and he resigned. No, I'm
Ah,
sorry. I don't think it was cousin, either cousin or brother.
cousin. Pretty sure cousin, but
Resigned.
family nonetheless.
Yeah, it was
Family to
family,
a
but he
governor.
resigned because he was in the Epstein files, and we
Yeah.
are seeing resignations here and there. But over in Europe, they're actually going on full scale, independent investigation and prosecuting these individuals. And it seems like when it comes to corruption and things of that nature, the Brits and Europeans have always been able to get it right. I mean, that's where technically we learned it from when you
I don't
think
wanna
about it.
talk about the
Like
Europeans' injustice. I hate Western Europe. I
I
could
mean,
go
that's
on and on
where
about this all
but
day. So,
you have to give it to them. They know how to
in
protest
this
and get
regard, I'll
things
give
done.
them some credit. In the
Like, that's
regard
where
of
they get
being
their
just,
credit,
I'm not gonna give them credit.
because that's where
Those
we get
flea bags could
our
suck
roots
more
from.
blood out of a country's people than a bu bed bug can. But I will
Right, and that's
agree.
almost that same it's almost the same situation. You have these traffickers, sucking out the youth, the women, the girls of this nation. Why shouldn't we have the same type of revolt that France has had in the past and even now, or even what European countries are doing and going after these individuals and either making them resign or prosecuting them in a court of law? I mean, it's just a no-brainer for what should take place next for these individuals, and the fact that this network of sex trafficking has reigned for so long, and this is the time that it's perfect to attack it and close it. But it seems like it's going to be precipitating throughout many generations, and hopefully the next administration, Democratic or Republican, is able to just set the record straight and put these people in jail and make sure that Americans truly know what was going on and what is going on continuously, and not have, the wool pulled over their eyes on a consistent basis, as we're
I
seeing with
mean,
this administration.
we'll see what happens. I am a bit iffy on what's going to happen because it really depends on who the Democrats elect to be the next kind of head of the party. Because I mean, Obama himself has said the party's too old, and he was the former head of the party, and kind of is still in like the present sense. He's a very looked upon figure for democratic ideas and what the party should do. And I mean, we see Schumer in charge right now, and he's just talking about Israel. And we know a big thing about the Epstein files is that it was essentially a blackmail operation for Mossad and the Israeli government. And so the question is like, well, can we really trust these individuals? Clearly, we've got Democrats and governor positions who's got family in the Epstein files. Clearly, we've got politicians who are leading the party at the moment who are already affiliated with the country that Epstein operated for, and they're openly supporting them in massive ways. And the question is, well, who's going to lead the Democrats? And are they going to make it a point that this needs to be taken care of? Because I really think that if a Democratic candidate wants to stand out going into the 2028 elections for the primary presidential candidate, I think if they were to make a big point on taking the people in the files to jail, like no matter who it is, I think it would be very, very beneficial for their platform. And I mean, we've seen Bill and Hillary Clinton say they're going to go testify to Congress, with everything, on camera.
Yeah, public testimony, which is if it does happen, it seems
If
that
it,
they
that's the thing. Like, I'd love to see it, but is it
yeah.
going to happen?
I don't think that the Republicans are going to allow that to happen. But if 2026 all works out, it can very well. They could, Democrats can definitely allow for them to come and speak in front of a open public form for testimony. I think that's the way to go. That's the first start of some actual true transparency into what's been going on, because the redactions of these files have been so um, lazy that you've had
Oh yeah.
victims that have started
Oh
to come
yeah.
out even against it. It's a full on non-trans. It's realistically a non-transparency act of what of really what's been going on. It's the opposite of what Thomas Massey and Ro Khan put together. That resolution that ended up getting passed is the complete opposite of that across the board. Across the board, and
And
then
one
yeah,
thing that I really also wanna say before we go further with this is honestly with how much of that small but steady Republican support there is for the Epstein files being released. You know, we got Massey, we've got Marjorie Taylor Greene's gone now, but we've got Nancy Mace, who's also been very surprisingly
yeah,
strong
very
about it,
vocal recently. Yeah,
and Lauren Barber, who's been 50-50, but you know the few of the women on the Republican side of things have been supportive of Massey's endeavor against the party status quo, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. It really just it feels like the house of cards could potentially crumble any moment, and it can reveal some just disastrously evil things. Which I'm already seeing how evil this shit is, man.
yeah,
It's sick
it's
to say the
completely
least.
evil.
To say the least.
It's completely evil, and continuing on these evils that the administration is either ignoring or facilitating. We're going to move to the Department of Homeland Security, where the prominent spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin, known for her forceful defense of Trump administration's aggressive immigration and deportation policies, is stepping down from her role amid ongoing agency challenges and increased personal threats to her and her family. Now, I just want to clear that I do not agree with any personal threats to any government official, anyone that works in government across the board. It's just their job. There's no reason to allow for these levels of personal threat. However, to
I agree with
continue
that.
on,
I
yeah,
don't know if
right.
I agree with that. I'm
I
more
mean,
radical than you, though. To be fair, I'm
I
like,
could agree
if
on
you
that
are doing
disagree.
heinous things as a government official, you should fear for your life. That was how it was 250 years ago. That's how it should be now.
No,
Washington would
yes,
not deal with this shit if
yeah.
we had politicians raping kids and and not listening to the courts. Oh my goodness, it would be a field day of what should we do with these people.
No,
But
a
that's just
thousand
my
percent.
radical opinion that I will
No,
gladly stand by.
and we appreciate you sharing that. And DHS Secretary Christine Noem praised McLaughlin's exceptional dedication, tenacity, and professionalism, noting she had initially planned to leave in December but stayed after recent incidents, including the fatal shootings of two U.S. citizens during confrontations with immigration officers in Minnesota. Her departure signals potential resets in the administration's deportation message strategy. As we all know, Homan has now taken the reins of all of these operations, which is a more professional look for the administration. And the previous strategy has faced public backlash and legal setbacks with even the deputy Lauren Bies or others like Katie Zachari, I believe I'm saying that right, positioned to take on key community communication duties. So they are trying to change their messaging compared to how it was before, which is a good step in the right direction, given the violence that has occurred in multiple communities, even in New Jersey itself. But it's good to see just a new side of the same coin, basically, if I was to put it, which is how it really should have been from the beginning.
Yeah.
Holman should have been there from the beginning. He has a level of ruthless pragmaticism. That's a House of Cards term right there, that he is able to bring to the DHS compared to Stephen Miller, DHS secretary, and even the former ICE head or director. He's just someone that wanted to have aggressive immigration raids take place. Where Homan is someone that understands how states operates and also is willing to work with Democratic governors to meet across the aisle and get things done and do more of targeted raids compared to blanket raids, which is what was happening in a lot of these states. So it's glad to
With
see
some
this being
very bad
honed in.
rhetoric from the agents and then and the agency themselves to kind of make it even worse. Like if
Yeah.
one thing I'll give Homan a lot of credit for, aside from scaling back the how aggressive it was, I think that's the best way to describe it, is that he's just good with his words. Whereas people like Christy Noam and more are not. They're just not good.
Yeah,
Like if
he's
someone
yeah,
can
yeah.
properly, and charismatically just explain themselves, say what the plan is, and then like if something doesn't go according to plan, they're able to hold that person accountable or that situation accountable to whoever caused it. Like we've seen with the murders of the to Renee Good and
Alex Brody.
Preddy. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And that's not something that we should just accept for the reason of, oh,
Yeah.
we gotta deport illegals. So why are you killing American citizens?
Yeah.
And I, it's a refreshing step to say the least,
Yeah,
because
they did
ICE was
just buy a
absolutely under control, and they
so they
probably honestly
yeah, go
they
ahead.
and I want to see how things go in the short to medium term with Homan being the one to really
Yeah.
lead them.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I do know in New Jersey and a few other places of I think New York as well, DHS purchase a building that is going to be a immigration processing center. So it's going to be interesting to see. Yes, they're bringing down their rhetoric, but it's going to be interesting to see how their actions do unfold going forward and how these facilities are ran and how these processes are happening, because it could really go in either direction. And as these, processing centers open up and reports come out about them, our listeners can be sure to listen to them here first. And standing on the political side of things, actually moving to New York, actually. So, the newly elected mayor, Zoran Mandami, has released his first preliminary budget proposal for fiscal year 2027, presenting Governor Hochul with a stark political challenge by offering two paths to close a multi-billion-dollar gap, which was left by all of the previous mayors of New York. I believe it was almost like a 15 uh, either
It was
million or billion-dollar deficit after, I mean, before Mandami was already starting to put in cuts. I think he was able to get it to almost down 11 million, or between 8 million or billion. I forget if it was an M or a B, but regardless, he was able to knock down some of those numbers with continued cuts. But the two paths forward are: one, rising income and corporate taxes on the wealthiest residents and corporations; or a path of last resort is increasing property taxes by 9.5%. And they haven't been raised in over 2 decades, which would impact millions of single family homes, co-ops, condos, and commercial buildings while dipping into city reserves. Now, Mondami has framed the property tax hike as undesirable but necessary if Albany refuses the progressive revenue measures to fund priorities like free childcare, free buses, rent freezes, or stabilized apartments, putting pressure on Hochul amid her reelection bid as well, and highlighting the deepening progressive moderate tensions within the state of Democratic Party. Now, I actually love this level of messaging, in my opinion,
Oh, he's good
because
at it. He's good
yeah,
at it. I
him and
watched a
AOC
video
have
of him
been spot
explaining the
on.
deficit and why they were doing exactly what they were doing, and I
Yeah.
was like, "This is very refreshing how well he's explaining this to
Oh, so
someone
well.
who doesn't know the details or the why of the budget."
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's how AOC has put it as well. And it's kind of how some members of Congress are talking about the whole DHS budget as well. Someone asked, I believe, Ro Khan on the DHS budget. He's like, what is going to happen to TSA workers? And he was like, the Donald Trump administration, he's like, to say to TSA workers is that Donald Trump administration wanted to shut down the government just because they did not have funding for ICE, even though they already had funding from the big, beautiful bill. So it means ICE is more important than all of these other, important services, key services of the government, that no, if ICE is not something that's operating or fully funded to where the Republicans see fit, then everything else can just go to the wayside. And that's the same messaging that almost
Insane.
AOC had when it came to the ACA subsidies and the passing of the big beautiful bill, and how Republicans were fighting for an increase in the tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts, but also in turn of the tax cuts, you're not going to have these subsidies or not have that same level of care that you've always received. And Mandami is doing that same level of messaging here to low income individuals that live in homes, co-ops, condos, and all of these other buildings. To them, it's like, well, you're going to raise my property taxes up, having me to pay more because the state doesn't want to have these millionaires, billionaires pay their fair share and corporations pay their fair share. I think that's a great way to put it, and it's a better way to start the whole, I would say, class discussion instead of the race discussion now,
I
because
agree. I
now
mean, it's
it frames,
America's more classist than
yeah,
racist, without a doubt.
once even within with Black History Month and also the sad passing of Jesse Jackson, it's important to note that a lot of like Malcolm X and MLK, they all started to move towards that, move towards the classes, the class issue identity for a lot of individuals. And it's not just race, it's about class. That's the most important piece of it. It's never been about race. Who cares if I'm Black, you're white, they're Asian, whatever? If we're all middle class and we're all hurting, we need to be able to hold the 1% and the 0.001% accountable for things that they aren't paying and taxes that they aren't paying. Like I saw a report that Palantir made 1.9, I think, billion in revenue and paid zero in federal taxes. So it's
Yeah.
like, what are we doing here? Once that conversation is turned to that, I think you're going to see a lot more younger individuals really not just get into politics, but also become Democrats, or even more liberal and even more independent, leaning to the Democratic side, just given how rampant profits have been, corporate profits have been under under the Trump administration in the first term, and even as we're seeing now as well.
I mean, one thing that I really, and Talarico actually said a very good message about this, just like a one liner. He said the only minority that's really ruining America is the billionaires.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
absolutely.
they absolutely are a minority. They're a minority more than almost any group in this country,
Yeah,
because it's literally at the 0.001%. And with what Hochul is doing, the reason why Mamdani has to do the property tax hike is because Hochul refuses to
yeah.
increase the state income tax on those higher earning individuals and families. And which is one thing that I would never like. If you, what I don't understand, I do understand it because of how the lobbying and primary funding and all this, where the money in politics comes from. But what I don't understand from a political support perspective is if you were a politician said, we want to cut the income tax of below 100,000 by 10%. We want to raise the income tax of over 100,000 by 10%. And I'm sure it's not going to be a perfect 50-50 share. Like, what
Mhm.
you lose is what you're going to gain or vice versa. There'll be some more numbers that go involved. But that's a very, very easy winning platform for most people in the entire country to support. Like, yeah, I'll be paying less in taxes. And to see that, one thing that I always give the Democrats crap for, and the Republicans too, but the Democrats especially, is the Democrats try to argue they're for the working class individuals more. And when you see things like this, where Hochul, the governor of a very democratic state, refuses to increase income tax on the state over the wealthiest individuals, the question is just where your priorities lie, or what are you afraid of?
It's a
You
corporate
know,
Democrat right there. That is.
corporate Democrat. That's the
That's
kind of
what that is.
Democrats we need to take a step away from, the ones that are too afraid of
Yeah, I
progressive,
agree.
interesting change. Like,
We
I'm not
need blue
at a
dog Democrats. I would greatly agree, which is what I would 9 times out of 10 call myself, who blue
you
dog
do, you
Democrat, more
do.
of a centrist individual, but still, basically keeping that Republican fiscal responsibility, but keeping that liberal understanding of rights and things of that nature, not intrusion on regular American lives, things of that nature. I think that's where honestly a lot of people in the country honestly are. I would say blue dog Democrats, or maybe even independent at the very least, as we've seen more people go to that, as the both parties have led a lot of voters nationwide down on a
Yeah.
lot of major
Oh
issues,
yeah.
a lot of major issues.
I mean, there's this one. This even goes back to Obama era. I remember I was watching this, reading this one newspaper article about elections in Baltimore, just to show like how much Democrats have let the working class or the people they promised to help excuse me, help down on the law is that it was an article about black voters in Baltimore and why a lot of them weren't voting because Baltimore typically is like around below 50% voter turnout from when I last checked.
Mm.
And it just basically came down to, well, we were excited about Obama, so we voted it for Obama. And then nothing changed for the better. So if the first black president isn't going to help make things better for our living situation, why do we expect anything to happen until we see it? So why would we support these people if we don't see that change? And it was a
Yeah.
very fair thing to say. And I mean, I think
You guys
that's what a lot of
have a black governor now, right?
yeah,
Westmore.
Westmore. He's a
Yeah,
cool guy.
Westmore. Yeah.
But that's one thing that really sits in the head of a lot of people is like, why would I support these people when I've seen what their policies lead to and I've seen what they stand for? That's why progressivism is really taking in the Democratic side a lot because you've got the moderate corporate Democrats who are all about favoring the rich and forever wars and more things that are not really what Democratic voters really care about. And then
Yeah.
you've got people who are like, well, we need to tax the rich. We need to focus on the country itself. We need to focus on social benefits. And we need to stop caring about cozying up to the
Yeah.
people who have the money because we're afraid of not getting their money for our political support.
I think it's really about like with progressives, it's really about just calling it as it is. Realistically, that's all they're
Yeah.
doing. There's no
Yeah,
sugarcoating
absolutely.
it. They're just calling it as it is. They're calling it as whether it's income inequality, um, whether it's anti-Semitic, like on terms of APAC inclusion on campaigns and things of that nature, like being anti-APAC, things of that nature, pointing out that Gaza is going through a genocide through Israel right now, like making sure that those talking points are at the forefront of really anyone in 2026 in certain areas. But I would also counter that to what AOC said during this was last year. I know this was during November voting day, when she was basically saying Democrats need to be a big tent party. We need to have individuals like Tallarico, Graham Plattner, Spanberg, all these different individuals. Like, yes, their message worked for their state, but that's not, even though their messages are all different and how they proceed, doesn't make them not Democrats. It's just a big tent that has to grow. Messaging can be different all around the country, but if we're all fighting for the same goal and or solution, it makes Democrats look more united than compared to Republicans, where yes, they're united, but we're starting to see a lot of cracks because even Representative Don Bacon. Actually, when I was in DC, I saw his office, but not him.
Yeah.
He's a senator that no, he's a representative. I'm sorry, that has now joined on to, I believe it's a resolution or a bill to actually restrict the president's pardon power, and that
Yeah.
goes across for both presidents, for Biden with his ghost pen, and then for Trump and his erroneous
I
pardons of
don't even
January
know who
6th
I'm forgiving.
individuals and everything like
Dude, do
that
you know
left
how
and right.
funny that is to me? Do you know how funny the dude pardoned the former president of El Salvador, not a Central American country,
Yeah,
pardoned him, and this guy was convicted in U.S. court for massive
I
drug
think it
being
was El
charged with
Salvador, actually, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
Central American countries. And he was convicted for drug trafficking and assisting drug trafficking into America. And then Trump pardons him, is asked about it, says, "Oh, I don't even know who that guy is." I'm like, dude, you pardoned him. Like, this is just as bad
Yep.
as the ghost pen. Literally just as bad. I'm like, you're pardoning people who you don't even know, probably because Stephen Miller, one of your aides, is telling you, hey, this is the guy you should pardon for XYZ reason, which may be corrupt, which may be just flat out stupid, which may be just based off bad ideology. But I absolutely think presidential pardons are an issue.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely an issue, and I feel like it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. Hopefully not, but it's as with the last two administrations, we have seen things increase. So we'll see as this bill, whether it goes through, whether it gets debate on the floor, things of that nature. We'll be sure to bring you all of that insight. And I want to move to an issue we actually really talked about more recently, but the redistricting landscape, to let our viewers and listeners know kind of what's going on and where the numbers are at and who's winning and who's losing. So the 2026 redistricting battles are intensifying with unprecedented mid-decade changes, described as a high-stake partisan gamble, far from resolution and potentially divisive for House control in November. States with new congressional maps already in place include California. As we know, they had their Proposition 50 in November, which was backed by Gavin Newsom, and that would potentially be adding Democratic seats to counter the Texans' gains. And then you have Missouri and North Carolina as well, which are GOP led maps enacted in October 2025, flipping seats without Democratic input. You have Ohio, which was triggered by state law. And then you have Texas, which added up to 5 Republican leaning seats, and Utah is a court ordered changes as well. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has called for a special session starting April 20th, 2026 for a potential pro Republican adjustment that could hurt Democratic incumbents. Virginia voters face an April 21st referendum, and a referendum is basically where the vote is on the measure is on the ballot and the public votes for it. And that referendum would be on the redistricting process amid legislative pushes for changes, while potential shifts remained in New York and Maryland. If the Voting Right Act, which we know the Supreme Court will look to take up those acts in a certain piece of that section of the Voter Rights Act, if those sections are erased, additional states like Louisiana or South Carolina could see renewed activity. These moves are driven by narrow House margins and yet carry massive implications for swing districts and overall partisan balance. So, as we've seen all of these states take up this redistricting battle, Democrats are continuously leading this charge in a battle that they did not want to start, but however, they've been able to actively maneuver themselves and put themselves at an advantage as things have laid out. But it will be interesting to see what's the full ruling on that part of the Voting Rights Act, even though the Supreme Court have not laid out an official decision. But I do know they are leaning towards diluting that act across the board. So if that is something that does happen, we'll be sure to allow for some updates for redistricting and see if states are going to be making any additional moves.
It'll be it'll be interesting to see. I it's kind of I think Supreme Court decisions are always interesting to follow because they can really change the landscape of how the country and states operate. And also the buildup kind of makes it feel like a TV show. Like what's gonna happen with this case? It's like every case is a new
Yeah, I mean,
episode.
I loved seeing it because I was like, I mean, they started this war, and just as Gavin Newsom said when he was at the I think it was Davos, I believe, when he was speaking, and he was like, oh, he thought the Republicans thought that Democrats were just going to be like, oh, it's so sad that they're doing this, they're breaking the rules, this, that, and the third, and Gavin Newsom was like, no, like we pulled our sleeves back, we knuckled up, and we were able to get things done in California, and a lot of other states saw that, and that motivated them to make these expansions, and it's working. So that's, I would say, a very good win for Gavin Newsom as 2026 is 2026 midterms are on the horizon, as well as 2018, I mean 2028 being not too far behind either.
Yeah, no, I do think that Newsom has some good fuel going into the primary for the candidacy with what he's been able to achieve in California. They I want to honestly, he's definitely the front runner right now based off just support more, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the Democratic public support goes because in my opinion, if he
Yep.
can't, I like Gavin, but if he can't denounce Israel, I'm not going to vote
Well,
for Gavin.
really, all of those things and as well answer for a lot of the situations in California as well. I mean,
Yeah,
he's really going to have to. I mean, funny enough, Stephen A. Smith, who is thinking about jumping in the
Stephen
race as
A.
well,
Smith.
was basically saying that, which I agree with, because he is going to have to answer for those things. And individuals that have not listened to Gavin Newsom's podcast, he has very two good episodes within his first few episodes. It's the first episode and the third episode. The first one is with the late Charlie Kirk, and the third episode is with Steve Bannon. They all pressure him on these issues like fraud, homelessness, the economy, and California, and all of these things. And he holds his ground very well, and he's able to spar with them. So I would implore individuals to please check that out, as it really changed my perspective on Gavin Newsom and really how he could spar on that national stage. But yes, it's going to be interesting to see. And I didn't mention this, but Senator Mark Kelly is also looking to throw his hat in the ring as well, a very decorated veteran. So it's going to be interesting to see him. He's seriously considering dropping his hat in the ring. So I think he'll be another good Democrat moderate voice to have in a field where it's going to be who knows how wide, maybe as wide as the Republican primary with like 11, 16 candidates. But it's going to be interesting to see. And we're going to be providing all of that great coverage here.
And anytime I hear Charlie Kirk, the name, all I think of is the meme song, the AI generated meme song, like the
Mm.
"We are Charlie Kirk," and so that's where my mind went to the moment you said his name. But I do like that he has people from the opposite side of the political spectrum on his podcast. I mean, I
Yeah,
do
it's the way
think
to go.
it takes definitely some guts to talk to people who don't agree with you. You know what I mean? Like you need to have some confidence and confidence in your own beliefs and confidence in your ability to demonstrate them in a conversation and debate. And
Yeah, I completely
nobody
agree.
wants to see somebody go up there and when they try to describe what they believe and why they believe it, they just go off of like very political politician sounding speech bits.
Yeah, no one wants sound bites. They want real and true. But I've actually loved the way that he's talked on the world stage, on multiple stages. And I've reported the other day that Nancy Pelosi is actually looking to back his presidency, or his candidacy for the presidency. So that's going to be interesting because she's very much a shaker and mover when it comes to these types of things. She's been very effective. I would say more effective than Chuck Schumer on a lot of issues. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how much her support helps, and as well if she's able to bring in one other Democrats, two younger Democrats, and as well as progressives and or independents into that camp, and how expansive his team may be. And then now I want to move on to the legal updates because speculation continues to build around Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's potential retirement, fueled by his forthcoming book, which is set for release on October 6th, just one day after the court's next term begins. The unusual timing, which would limit promotional opportunities for a sitting justice during oral arguments, combined with Alito turning 76 in April, his 20-year tenure and strategic window to secure a conservative successor before the 2026 midterms, potentially flip the Senate control to Democrats. So this has prompted widespread rumors that he may announce his departure soon to allow President Trump a fourth nomination while Republicans hold
Insane.
leverage. So he
And
would
Ruth
have
Bader
four.
Ginsburg didn't want to retire when Obama was president.
Yep. And here we are. And people are now, talking that, Roe v. Wade may never be official federal law ever again in their lifetime if this is something that takes place. And then on top of all of this, you have the Supreme Court is nearing the highly anticipated decision on Trump's broad tariff authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which the next possible release date includes February 20th, February 24th, and 25th, as we said in our last podcast. So as those dates start to roll around, I'll be, reading and or listening to see what are some of the opinions that are coming out from these justices. And I do believe it's now sitting at a 28% chance that these tariffs are deemed favorable by the Supreme Court. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Trump administration does, or as we have seen the Supreme Court, football it down to the summer months or even later when Alito possibly retires and there's another conservative justice that takes his seat. But yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg shot uh, Democrats in the foot by not stepping down. I mean, then you had McConnell holding off with Merrick Garland's appointment because Obama was nearing the end of his term as well. So there were a lot of hiccups to where Democrats lost the chance to instill a liberal leaning Supreme Court, but they're having calls from Democrats to, once they do get in power, to expand and pack the court, which I don't know really how I feel about that. I know FDR tried that and that did not sit too well with him. But I mean, strategically as things have been laid out from Obama to now, it seems like to Democrats that seems like it's the only option to be able to balance out the court is to expand the court and to appoint liberal judges, which is not, I would say, a terrible thought process, but I would say it's a more dangerous thought process, because as you have new administrations come in and justices retire, you're just going to have this same back and forth between whether or not we're going to expand the court, whether or not justices are going to retire towards the end of a president's term, before end of a president's term. We're going to have all these things happening left and right on a continuous basis. So hopefully, there's just good benefit that happens from Alito leaving and or a conservative judge possibly taking his seat as well.
And well, I don't agree really with court packing, but this is one of those things where I also don't know enough. So my opinion is very open to being molded. But I agree with the argument that I've heard before is that, well, if we're just going to expand the courts, it's going to lead to further expanding of the courts, which is in itself a pretty dangerous precedent of, oh, well, we can't put in the judges that we want by substituting them out here. We should just expand the courts and put in more. But one thing that I do like more, honestly, is term limits for Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, I think term limits for Supreme Court justices and for elected officials overall is something that
Oh yeah, it's
all
insane
Americans
you can be in politics for
can agree with.
50 years, man. Joe
Yeah.
Biden's been in politics since he was like 28.
Yeah, yeah, and for some individuals, it's like, if you're governing good, then you should still be continued to be elected to govern. But I say, why not just take step to the side and let a new generation continue on your legacy, and you just be there and provide guidance and everything of that proportion to be able to set them up for success, just as that member was able to set themselves up for success within that state, district, county, and so forth. Yeah.
It'll be I doubt we'll ever see term limits, and I don't know if we'll ever see members of Congress not allowed to own stock. One thing that I don't get is like just make it illegal to own individual stock and just own index funds. Like
I
it's
usually
just
say
if you
that
want to
this
invest in
shouldn't
the
be.
stock market, I think you should still be allowed to as a politician, but you can't just have like all your money in certain individual stocks, because then that's going to greatly influence whichever way you go when it comes to policy making, or how easy it makes it for you to be lobbied to for that specific industry they're in or that specific company. I mean, we've seen, for example, on Trump's side things taking 10% control of Intel. That's pump the shit out of their stock price. Imagine being in those back rooms knowing Intel is going to be 10% acquired, and then you buy them before that happens. Stuff like that happens. And I don't I do think that they should be allowed to invest in the American stock market. I think it should be through index funds and no specific individual stock where is ripe for corruption, like we've seen with
Yeah,
many
I
politicians.
usually say that the rule of thumb should be no individual stocks that coincide with their committee assignments, basically.
Yeah.
So you should that kind of can curtail some level of corruption, because you're no longer having stake in these companies that you're going to be dealing with within your committee or within your basically within your legislative duties that are handed to you by the Speaker of the House and so forth. So I think that's definitely two good ways to go about it when it comes to looking at whether congressmen and women should trade stocks on a global scale, on a national level. I think it's something that doesn't hurt for them to benefit from, given they have that information, but it should not be for stocks that are within their peer review, committee assignments, things of that nature. That's just where you see corruption just go full fledged. and just doesn't stop realistically.
No, no. I mean, we've seen. I think these Epstein files have really shown people just how far the corruption can go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And now we're moving to our last section, which is kind of bombastic to say
Oh, dude, this is
in
insane.
another
This is
world. But
insane.
on the international front, U.S.-Iran relations stand at a perilous brink, with reports indicating the Trump administration is dangerously close to major military action. White House statements affirm the U.S. has many arguments for strikes amid regional military buildups, preparations for potential prolonged operations, and limited progress in Geneva nuclear talks focused on basic guiding principles. An analyst cites six primary drivers for this, which one being Iran's advancing nuclear and ballistic missile programs, proxy attacks in the Middle East, sanctions on economic fallout, deepened U.S. Israeli alliances, domestic political incentives, and enhanced military readiness, with Trump openly floating regime change and severe consequences. These escalations pose acute risk to oil prices, regional stability, and broader U.S. foreign policy commitments. Thomas Massey and Ro Khan are actually looking to force another vote next week on the War Powers Act, targeting involvement with Iran. And as these interconnected stories, from the media classes and clashes and accountability calls to redistricting wars, judicial speculation, economic pressure, and near war brinkmanship continue to unfold. This one specifically on Iran is something that the whole world really needs to be watching, because it's within days, weeks, that they're saying that a huge attack could take place in Iran. And I know the Israel camps are reporting this as well, and we've seen. Um, a large conglomeration of U.S. Air Force planes, as well as warships, all heading towards that direction. So it's only it's not an if, it's now a when this will
Yeah.
happen.
I mean, you
Honestly,
gotta check out the Kalshi market, see when they when they start predicting that these strikes will happen. You know, they'll be like a random bet of will go of is U.S. going to missile attack Iran today, and it goes up to 80%, and
yeah,
really goes to also show how much of an insider things we've got going on for corruption. But I really think that with how much Trump touted being anti-war, no new wars, and then he's going to Iran to war with Iran for Israel, I
yeah,
really one they must have some insane blackmail on the guy, insane blackmail on the guy, and two, I think this is going to be like the beginning of the end of this Republican Party. This is really the argument of attacking Iran is America first. That argument could be properly made if they actually had before threatened us or attacked us on our soil or on one of our bases. And even then, the argument of them attacking our bases, we surround their country with American bases.
yeah,
If
basically.
we had Chinese bases in Canada and Mexico surrounding us, it would be a very sketchy situation to say the least, and no one would blame us for being awry of China's bases. But with that said, it's a big difference between attacking one of these bases when if China tries to attack us, and then attacking the mainland of China. And also not the best comparison because America and China are superpowers, whereas Iran doesn't even have nuclear missiles.
Yeah,
And the argument has been made for the last 30 years of they're so close to nuclear missiles,
yeah,
and this argument's been made for nearly 3 decades now. You know, you
just
guys
about
can't
three
stop beating
decades.
the dead horse.
And then Yahoo says they're almost close. I mean, I don't want to imitate his voice actually. He said he's almost yeah, they always say Iran's close to a nuclear bomb. They're weeks away, they're months away, and then next thing you know, it's the same thing next year, same thing the year after that. It's the continuous fear mongering that we're seeing from the Israeli camps on the Trump administration, and that's why there's going to be a coordinated attack by the two of them on Iran. It's going to have dire consequences, and we're being pulled into another war, only to realistically help Israel and their and how scared they are of Iran, which is understandable. But at the same time, it's like, why are you
Not our
attacking
problem.
a bull when it's not seeing red, realistically? and
It's not our
that's what
problem
we're gonna
too.
see.
That's what I hate.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was saying that with Ukraine, not our problem, but now apparently the tone switches when it's Israel and things of that nature because of just the country itself. Um, but yeah, it's just terrible to see that American troops, families, sons, daughters going to be brought into this war if it is truly something that officially takes place within the next few weeks, month, and so forth. Honestly, it's going to be terrible, very
It
terrible
will
for
be.
the American people. And I've already seen gas prices starting to tickle, I mean, trickle up a little bit. I've seen at some Wawa's almost through back to $3 for gas, actually, with some that I used to see as low as 270, 275, almost, just about. So that 30-cent difference, that people may start to see, or even higher increases, are fueled just from the speculation even of this war starting. If it were to actually start, you would see potentially higher increases as well. Yeah.
Yeah, let me pull up the crude oil prices. I want to check that out before we finish this episode because I bet they've been going up.
Oh yeah, I
WT.
bet they've been going up too. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, it was kind of like a shock and awe when I was driving today. I was like, wow, they really have gone up a good bit since yesterday, unfortunately.
Gone. The prices are up 14% in a month. Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense because there was probably, I mean, everything behind the scenes, the build up, all the negotiations, the talks, leading up to this point has probably, um, you know, probably is being evidence as to why that 15% increase has already happened and hasn't happened in, the recent, hours or day, given it's just being talked about that, we're going to be going on to a full war campaign in Iran, unfortunately. But always, to our listeners, thank you for tuning into Behind the Ballot, where we keep politics engaged, balanced, and informative. Stay curious, stay critical, and stay involved. I'm Mikhail Jenkins, and until next time, keep looking beyond the headlines and behind the ballot.
We appreciate all your support. Thank you very much. I give you 3 thumbs up if I had 3 thumbs up.
Give you a 4. There you go.
Yeah, four. We got 4 out here. Nice, nice. I wasn't even counting right. But God bless you all. Have a good night.
Everyone, have